How's it going? Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet. Sorry, that echo really fucks with me. One day I'll figure out a better way to go about all this. Anyway, I'm in a little bit of a different setting. I had a video conference earlier and I started looking into this topic and I was like, man, I'll just leave things set up as they are. We'll just talk about it real quick. Someone on Twitter made the point that the play-in games are tonight, which they are, and so I'm just like, okay, I want to watch those too. So let me get this out the way. Um, Basically, nobody so far that I've seen anyway, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, nobody has reported on the updates regarding Dak Prescott's lawsuits. Hey Brian, how's it going? Um, and that reminds me, seeing Brian in the comments. If you're watching on Twitter, please join us on YouTube so I can be sure to see your comments. If you are commenting on Twitter, I may not see them. Sugar Daddy Williams says, let's not sleep on this story. It's major. I 100% agree. So, quick backstory for anybody who somehow is not up to speed on what's going on. In the month of March, news came out that a woman was accusing Dak Prescott of sexual assault. And once again, disclaimer, if you are sensitive to topics of sexual assault, you may just not want to watch this episode because the terms are going to come up a lot. So anyway, um, so yeah, in the month of March, news came out that a woman was accusing Dak Prescott of sexual assault. At the time, there was speculation that criminal charges might be filed. There were no criminal charges ever officially filed. However, there was a civil suit. This woman was suing Dak Prescott for $100 million. Initially, she and her attorney sent Dak Prescott a demand letter for $100 million, and Dak Prescott basically declined to honor that request to pay for her supposed damages. Um, and he actually countersued with an extortion lawsuit because basically the wording of the demand letter was, in so many words, we will not file criminal charges if you will pay $100 million for the damages that we claim Miss Shores has suffered. And Dak Prescott and his attorney, Levi McCatherine, you've heard that name before. Levi McCatherine has defended Jerry Jones. Levi McCatherine has defended Michael Irvin in some pretty high profile situations. So they were like, hey, that's not going to fly. Not only are we not covering those damages, but we actually don't like the way this was worded. This feels like extortion. We're going to sue you. So we had two cases going on at once. There was a civil suit in Dallas County where Victoria Shores was suing Dak Prescott for $100 million. And then we had another civil suit in Collin County where Dak Prescott was suing Miss Shores, accusing her and her attorneys. There were three people named in the lawsuit. So they were all being accused of extortion. And he was requesting $1 million in damages that would not go to him, but to some nonprofit that is meant to support survivors of sexual assault. He and his representation felt it was important to actually do something to support what they called actual survivors of sexual assault. So, fast forward, there were some things that happened that we discussed in the last episode that I did, where I talked about the fact that in Collin County, the attorneys filed motions to dismiss and counterclaims for themselves. So there were motions to dismiss for each of them, but not for Miss Shores. And then in Dallas County, there were a few things that happened. There was a motion for dismissal that was supposed to happen in May in anyway. And then there was a request for non-suit without prejudice, where basically the plaintiff, in this case, Miss Shores, said, hey, you know what? I want to drop this suit. The without prejudice part means that she can bring it up again at some point. But basically she was saying, hey, judge, can we just like not do this, right? And so in the last episode, I talked about the fact that that was a request. It was a motion that still had yet to be granted. And we really didn't know what impact this would have on the extortion suit. So fast forward to today, one of the first things that I see this morning is that the motion for non-suit has been granted. In other words, in Dallas County, the case against Dak Prescott is officially closed. So some people last episode were like, does this mean Dak Prescott won? And I was like, hey, this is a really good sign for him, because if the plaintiff requests dismissal, like there's not really a good chance that even in the very, very, very rare situation that the case does move forward, if the plaintiff has already said, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, what evidence or what testimony could possibly be brought up against the defendant, right? So I don't like to misinform y'all. I'm gonna try my best to tell y'all the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So while in my mind I was like, yeah, Dak won, I didn't want to say that without it being officially true. So now the motion has been granted. And I'm gonna pull up that document for you guys so that y'all can see it. Like there's not much on there, but like I just feel like people like seeing these documents and stuff. Where is it? Here, let me share this with you guys. I had to do a redacted version of it because there was some sensitive information on this document. And at first I downloaded it. And then luckily I did do like a quick review of the documents before. And I was like, whoa, we're not putting that on the screen. So yeah, this is the document. This is the cover letter of the document where it says, please see attachments, order granting non-suit without prejudice. And this, I believe, nope, that's not it. That's where Shore's requested non-suit. I think this document, nope, that's the cover sheet again. Hold on, I do a bad job of labeling these things. Here we go. This is the official order granting non-suit without prejudice. It's signed, it's dated for April 12th, which means this actually happened last week. But as far as being filed with the rest of the court documents, that happened this morning. So people like me who are waiting to see it be officially filed, we didn't see it until this morning. It was dated April 16th, but as we can see, it was signed by a judge on April 12th. So as of the weekend, that case was closed and dropped. And I see a lot of comments coming in that I don't want to miss. So let me take this off the screen and see what y'all are saying. JV says, what's good? How's it going? Good to see you. My 2 cents says the media's hush mouth because Dak is innocent. 105.3 the fans should be ashamed. We're going to get to that because there were quite a few people who asked me questions about 105.3 the fan and what they allowed to happen on the air and what it all meant. And so in the title of this video where I talk about potential aftermath, that's kind of one of the things that I was thinking about. So we're going to get into that after I talk about what's happening on Dak's end in Collin County. JV says, Jazz, I catch your replays. I'm so glad you're catching the replays. Like, I miss seeing you in the chat, but I've only had time to go live really late these days. You were the first I heard before anyone discussing this. Big ups to you. Thank you so much. I was trying to stay on top of it because this story did really mean a lot to me as a fan and as a woman. So I wanted to keep up with what was going on and what was being said. So yeah, like I was saying, on the Dallas County side, the case is closed. The suit has been dismissed. It was dismissed without prejudice. But honestly, based on everything that was filed and everything that I read, unless something major comes out, there's really no grounds to bring this up again. No reasonable person would. Now, if it does come up again and there's no information, you guys know I will keep you in the loop. But as of right now, I think it's safe to say that this is going away. So earlier today on Twitter, I was like, okay, I found out something. I don't know if I should go live or if I should wait till I have even more information. And the even more information that I was waiting for was to see how this would impact Dak Prescott's extortion suit. Because I'm like, well, if you are suing someone for extortion because they are, accusing you of something because you didn't give them $100 million, what happens when they drop the suit? Is there still grounds for extortion because they sent the demand letter in the first place? Or does this mean we're just gonna all just wipe our hands of this, move on, and just let Dak focus on the upcoming season? And so what I found this afternoon was that in Collin County, there is a motion to dismiss. Now, when it comes to Collin County, it's a little bit harder to find documents related to the situation. I'm actually surprised that I even found a copy of Dak Prescott against Victoria Shores and her attorneys. But what I was able to find, and I'm going to bring this up again for you guys. Yes, I have a blanket on my couch. So what I was able to find was the events and orders of the court. So it's really small, so y'all might not be able to see it. But on April 5th, we had the motions to dismiss that were filed by Victoria Shore's attorneys. So that was when I was like, okay, I don't know why they filed a motion to dismiss for themselves, but I think it probably has something to do with the fact that they were acting as attorneys, so they're trying to defend themselves in that way. But what we have more recently, so in the last episode, we talked about that on April 9th, there was a notice of hearing. And now what we have is a motion to dismiss on the Collin County side. So this is a different motion to dismiss. This wasn't filed by Victoria Shore's attorneys. Um, JV, the purple light did not go away. This is just where I'm set up today, and I wanted to make this quick and not do the whole thing. The purple light will be back, I promise. So yeah, this motion to dismiss wasn't filed by Victoria Shore's attorneys. This actually looks like a motion to dismiss as being filed by a judicial officer. So if you remember, it was either the last episode or the episode before that, I was like, there was a motion to dismiss that was filed by a court organizer, a court coordinator is what it was. And it was on the Dallas County side. And it was a motion to dismiss basically because nothing was happening. There was not enough information, evidence, testimonies in order to move forward with that case. And they're just like, hey, if you're not going to do anything, we're going to throw this out in May. So ironically, on the same date on the Collin County side, it looks like there's another motion to dismiss. So as of May 14th or sooner, this case will also be dismissed. So, what it looks like is that both cases on both sides are set to be dismissed. Now, here are some things that you may need to know just in case it comes up later. Like I said, I don't want to misinform y'all. This could mean that they settled out of court. So they could have decided, and I do think that there are a lot of reasons but why not only Dak, not only Victoria Shores, but other people connected to this situation would not want this to go to trial. So I do think there are a lot of reasons why they and various other people might have pushed for this to be settled out of court. So this doesn't mean that nobody paid anybody anything. What this means is that as far as the request for trial by jury that Dak asked for, that's not going to happen. And as far as any other documents being made public to where people like me can go and either look them up myself or ask other people to be like, hey, can you get me this? It won't be anywhere that's accessible. I'm not that well connected. I'm not that well connected to get documents related to stuff that's settled out of court. So there's that. This also doesn't mean that what the plaintiff or what Dak's accuser said wasn't true. Parts of it may be true. It could have been a situation where two people looked at the same situation differently. We don't know. So while Dak hasn't been formally charged with anything, he hasn't been indicted for anything, he's not doing time for anything, but that doesn't mean that every single thing that she said was a lie. Maybe something did happen between them. Maybe she looked at it in a way that he didn't. We won't know. So you can say he's innocent in the sense that as far as the court of law is concerned, there's no indictment, there's no sentencing or anything like that. But that's not what was really on trial here. So all we really know for a fact is that these lawsuits are both being dismissed. There's a good chance that means that she didn't have enough evidence to move forward with any sort of accusations or any sort of lawsuit. But anything else related to the case is going to be kept out of the court, off the record. So yeah, Dak is in the clear as far as public record is concerned. My 2 cents says, oh, I agree, but I was worried about her suit against him. His suit needs to follow through against her. Just like it's hard for her to continue with her suit because of lack of evidence, it might be hard for him to continue with his suit. Because if he says, I'm suing you for extortion, and then she's no longer extorting him, And then she's also like, well, I'm not extorting you, so I'm not going to show up and testify. And my attorneys have filed for motions to dismiss, so they want no parts of this either. It's like, where do you really get the foundation for a case? You know what I'm saying? And it always seemed like from the very beginning, like he had no interest into making this a public spectacle. So even if there was room for him to continue making a big deal out of it, I just don't see Dak or his attorney moving forward in that sense. I think more than anything, they just wanted this to go away. And so that for Dak Prescott is 100% a win. Now, as fans, I definitely understand that desire to see him move forward with the case and to see someone who may have possibly brought up false charges kind of have to pay for that, right? Even I, as a woman, I feel a way about it because regardless of how people feel about what was and what wasn't brought out in this case, there are a lot of people who are going to point to this case as another reason to not believe women, and as another example of women chasing money, which may or may not be true. Like I said, that's not what was proven or disproven in this situation, but that is how a lot of people are going to use it. Sugar Daddy One says statute of limitations has run out. He can't be criminally charged. I think that's correct. I looked it up and I do believe that is correct. Um, so yeah, if I'll put it this way, whenever it comes to, because a lot of people seem to be really focused on whether or not Dak is a criminal. There hasn't been any evidence presented that he is. So if we are still sticking to the idea that a person is innocent until proven guilty, then 100% Dak Prescott is innocent. So I'll put it that way. JV says that would have ruined Dak Prescott. He would have gotten his Walter Payton Man of the Year stripped. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that aspect. But while we're on the topic, let's talk about the potential aftermath of this. So since the suit in Dallas County was dropped without prejudice, there is the possibility that another suit could come up. So if you've ever seen situations where one person accuses someone and then that goes away and then all of a sudden it's 5 people accusing someone. I don't see that happening, but there are a myriad of ways that this could be brought back up, so to speak. So as far as real tangible aftermath though, what I hear a lot of people talking about, sorry, I have gum in my mouth, I was trying not to chew it. What I hear a lot of people talking about is, okay, what about 105.3 The Fan? They let these people, and not these people, but they let this person go on the air and speak at will, calling Dak Prescott a rapist, accusing him of all sorts of things, and never really took the time to point out that these were allegations, that these were reports. The way they handled that was negligent in a lot of ways. And there are a lot of people who feel like, well, one, at minimum, the folks at 105.3 The Fan should say something, right? Which I think is fair. I think if you are in such haste to report that these charges have been brought up, to report that these lawsuits are happening, and to bring not only the attorney of Miss Shores, but a person who happens to be named in Dak Prescott's extortion lawsuit, if you're in such haste to bring that person on the air and let them speak so liberally about Dak Prescott, well, now that everybody knows that the suit has been dropped, where's that haste? Where is that urgency to report on the story? It was there when you had someone who was willing to accuse Dak Prescott and to drag his name through the mud. But now all of a sudden that's not the case. All of a sudden we're dragging our feet, we're taking our time, we're perhaps never talking about this. So I definitely understand the people who are upset with 105.3 The Fan. And here's the thing that I'll say about that. While I do believe that as journalists we have a certain responsibility to tell the whole story, unfortunately, the folks at 105.3 The Fan aren't under any sort of legal obligation to tell the whole story. So this is one of those situations where, as a fan, as a consumer, you can watch how they move. You can decide if you want to go on Twitter and say something about it. You can decide if you want to ever listen to them ever again. But they're really under no obligation to say anything. What they do or don't do, or what they say or don't say, is really just a representation of what they value and what their goals are at this point. And so you can I can't talk. You can interpret their action or inaction as you will at this point. So that's why I'm not on Twitter like going at them like, y'all should do this, y'all should do that. I have no interest in getting in an online fight with them and telling them what they should do. I know what I'm going to do. And hopefully this news reaches enough people to where people know that Dak Prescott is in the clear in this sense. Um, Brian Bradford says, wasn't Michael Irvin case dismissed too in the same way? It was dismissed in a very similar way. Michael Irvin did also request a trial by jury. He was also represented by Levi McCathern. He did get to a point where he had a good bit of evidence that a lot of people felt proved that he didn't do what he was accused of doing. Um, and things seemed to be moving forward towards a trial. And then all of a sudden, everything was dismissed and we didn't hear anything else. So, yes, it was dismissed in a very similar way. One day we looked up and Michael Irvin was back on the NFL Network, and it was like, oh, okay, awesome. My 2 cents says, so 105.3 The Fan is the new TMZ. I would say nobody can ever really top TMZ. TMZ will always be in a class of their own when it comes to reporting on celebrities and whatnot. What I will say, and I can only say this, I can only say so much about 105.3 The Fan. I'm not gonna act like I listen to them all day, every day. What I will say is the way that they've handled this and other stories does show that they have some sort of either obligation or motivation or desire to report on news stories that are basically gossip. So this story, they let someone go on air, someone who Dak Prescott was accusing. At that point, the lawsuit had been filed. So Dak Prescott was accusing 3 people of extortion. They let one of those people go on air and call Dak Prescott a racist without stopping that person, without any disclaimers, right? The Micah Parsons rumor, no news of who said it or if it has any actual impact on Micah Parsons standing with the team, his contract negotiations, or even what the behavior was that was supposedly wearing some people thin, right? So what we're seeing is like some unfounded, unsubstantiated stories that 105.3 The Fan seems very interested in perpetuating. And there was a Twitter space not long ago where a few people kind of discussed how that might impact not only the fans' perception of 105.3 The Fan, but also various players and how they might feel about participating on certain radio shows or having a relationship with those guys. I can't speak to that. I don't know them. I just know, and this isn't just for 105.3 The Fan. This is for 105.3 The Fan. This is for ESPN. This is even for some content creators. Sometimes you have to take certain things with a grain of salt. Maybe a grain is not enough. Maybe you need a whole teaspoon of salt. Like, maybe some news you need to brine overnight. You know what I'm saying? But I just feel like we have to be a little bit more careful about how we're processing what we hear. Like for me, when I first heard the Micah Parsons story, the first thing that I started wondering was like, okay, who said it? What exactly did they say? What details do we really have? We can make a lot of assumptions by hearing, oh, someone in the building said that they'd be happy if Micah Parsons went away, right? But who is that? And what decision making power do they really have? And why are they really saying it? If you can't tell me any of that and make me believe that this story is significant, I'm going to dismiss it. So those are the kinds of situations where I would encourage y'all to do the same. So I'm disappointed not only in 105.3 The Fan for reporting it, I'm disappointed in ESPN for picking it up. Like, all these media platforms honestly should do better. But like once it's put out there and people see that it's gaining traction, the environment that we're in, a lot of these media outlets are incentivized to get as many clicks, to get as many eyes, to get as many ears, to get as many numbers as possible. But what that means is that we have to be even more careful because it might not be everyone's motive to educate and share the news and share all the updates. Like this, I don't know how long it's going to take this to be reported on ESPN or 105.3 The Fan or anywhere else. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go live today, because I'm just like, okay, I feel like this is something that people should know sooner rather than later. So someone asked me, could 105.3 The Fan be sued for defamation? Like I said before, there's grounds to accuse them of negligence, which negligence is basically the accessory equivalent to defamation. So it's kind of like how somebody might commit a crime and maybe you didn't commit the crime with them, but you drove the car they were in to get away. or you helped them get the weapon that they used to commit said crime, and they call you an accessory, negligence is like the journalistic equivalent of that. I didn't hear anyone at 105.3 The Fan call Dak Prescott a racist, but they let someone go on the air and call him a racist, and they continued to interview that person without any sort of disclaimer or any sort of pauses or any sort of request for them to adjust their language. Um, so yeah, there are a few things that could happen. Do I anticipate anything happening? No, because like I said from jump, I think more than anything, Dak Prescott wanted this to go away. I think he wanted his name to be cleared, which for all official purposes, it has been. And I think he just didn't want the rumor to be out there that he would do something like this, or that he did do something like this. So if he were to bring up a suit against 105.3 The Fan, that would basically perpetuate this situation. And so that's why I don't see him doing that. I don't see him doing anything unnecessarily that would perpetuate this situation. Now, if they continue going on the air and saying things like this, then yeah, we might see some sort of action taken, because it would be like, okay, I let you get away with the first time. Now you're still doing it. I'm gonna have to take care of this. I'm gonna have to handle it. But since it's something that happened once, I just don't see it going any further. Let's see. The cold part about all this is, to our knowledge, Dak don't mess with anybody. When it comes to our knowledge, that's another one of those things that I take with a grain of salt, only because I know personally how secretive some people can be about their personal lives. So there's very little that I want to assume about Dak or CD or Micah or anybody without any actual evidence, good or bad, just because I know how different public presentation can be from someone's private life. So I will reiterate, when it comes to a person being innocent until proven guilty, there is nothing that proves Dak Prescott is guilty of anything. So on the record, yes, he is innocent. And that's good news to me. That's good news to many fans who do believe in our hearts that he's innocent and don't want to see him go through unnecessary litigation, proceedings, or have his name dragged through the mud. But just in case something else comes out later, or something else happens later, I do want y'all to be clear about what this actually means. So on the record, all this means is both lawsuits have been dropped, and anything else that happens, if anything else happens, it's happening out of court, it's happening off the record, it's things that we won't be privy to. So, yeah, that's about 30 minutes. Any other questions about this situation, or any other random questions y'all want to ask while I have a few minutes? Going once, going twice. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in and who's been keeping up with this story. It's really hard for people to really find interest in stuff like this while there's so many questions about the draft and free agent moves and other things of that nature. But I do think stories like this are important. Richard, what's your last name? Richard Royster says, I'm glad you're speaking on this from a woman's point of view. They still haven't said anything on the major networks about that. Yeah, so one reason why I'm kind of giving the major networks a pass is because a lot of them didn't say anything in the first place. I didn't see anything on Get Up or First Take about this. And so now that he's been cleared, I really didn't expect them to come back and be like, hey, you know that lawsuit that we never reported on? It's been dismissed. I think I heard about this on an episode of SportsCenter, on like a daytime episode of SportsCenter, which I don't watch every day, so I might go back and look for it. But no, for Richard and for Kelvin, there has been a motion to dismiss for Dak's case. So I don't know if y'all missed that part. I'm going to bring it up again. Share screen. All right, so here it is. Even though I wasn't able to bring up the actual motion to dismiss, the last thing after the notice of hearing is a motion to dismiss, where it looks like as of May 14th, this case will officially be dismissed. So if anything happens, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Kelvin, his extortion case. So the case against him in Dallas County is officially closed. Victoria Shores requested to dismiss that without prejudice. It has been closed. but also the case in Collin County where he was suing them for extortion. There is a motion to dismiss. So that's why I'm reporting on this, because I already reported that there was a motion to dismiss the other case. I wanted to come on here and let y'all know that that motion was granted, so it is official. There is a difference between requesting a motion and actually having that motion granted. Usually when there's a request by the plaintiff, it does end up being granted. And so that's also why I'm reporting on this today, is because um, this request has been submitted and it more than likely will be granted. So it looks like both suits on both sides are being dismissed. Okay, Sugar Daddy says all major networks cover this. I don't watch CNN as much as I should, so I will take y'all's word for it that they covered it and that they dragged him, as Richard is saying. And in that case, I mean, tag them, let them know that the case. I mean, at minimum, they should be reporting on the case against him, because like that case is officially closed. On his end, there's a motion to dismiss, which technically something could happen to where that motion isn't granted. It doesn't happen often, but in theory it could happen. But the case against him that was filed by Victoria Shores, that case has been dismissed. It has been dropped. It is officially closed. On the record, it is listed as closed. So yeah, if they're not reporting on this, they're dragging their feet or just not doing their due diligence in terms of telling the whole story, which is really disappointing. So that's what we got. It looks like nothing's going to happen with either case, or it looks like nothing else is going to happen with either case. So all we have is what she claimed in her demand letter, what she claimed in her petition. And actually, now that I think about it, I kind of want to look and see. I don't think we did a thorough look at the facts section of Dak's case. Okay, he talked about. Okay, so here's the thing about Dak's petition. In her case, she was suing for damages that she suffered because of sexual assault, right? So she was obligated to list the events that happened the way that she remembered them. Dak is suing for extortion, so he did not have to give his account of what happened that night. He only had to give his account of receiving this letter, the contents of the letter, so on and so forth. He didn't have to address the events that night at all. As a matter of fact, looking at his petition, it looks like the only ways that he even addressed those events is where he said sexual assault is a despicable crime that no person should ever endure. Mr. Prescott, a new father to his baby girl, has great empathy for survivors of sexual assault and believes fervently that all perpetrators of such crimes should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. With that said, Mr. Prescott has never engaged in any non-consensual sexual behavior with anyone. Indeed, defendants' false claims in this regard undermine the courage of actual sexual assault survivors everywhere, as well as the legitimacy of the horrific traumas they have endured. So that is the extent to which he addressed what actually happened that night. So he didn't give his own account of the evening. He didn't say, oh, well, this is actually where I met her. This is actually what happened. None of that, because he wasn't obligated to. So, we also have this particular section where he talks about, the timeline of the events, and defendant Shore's actions in the 7 years since the alleged assault are consistent with being involved with only consensual actions with Mr. Prescott. So that's another section where, even though he doesn't go into detail, he does say like, hey, whatever happened between us was consensual. But whereas she kind of gave a moment by moment account of what happened, that isn't mentioned in his petition against her. It's just a few references to things that she said and saying that they were false. JV says, now I can get back to panicking about the Cowboys front office being complacent as usual. Big Mac says, good, that line-ass female needs to face consequences for trying to fuck that man's life up. Well, that's what the lawsuit would have been. And so, as of right now, we don't know what consequences she will face, if any. Sugar Daddy says, check her motion. Her prejudice can reopen the case without prejudice. I've already addressed that in the last episode and in this episode. I've already addressed the fact that her non-suit without prejudice means that she can refile, not necessarily reopen this case, but she can come back to this situation and file another suit. And Richard Royster says, smash that like button. Please do. So, fun fact, a lot more people watch me on Twitter than on YouTube. So it's like, I'll see hundreds of people watching, but my YouTube numbers still be low as hell. So if you are watching on YouTube, please at minimum press the like button. That helps me out a little bit. But Sugar Daddy, yeah, that's something that I addressed early in this episode and also in the last episode, that yes, she can bring this up again. So not necessarily reopen this case. This case is closed. It has been dismissed. But if she wants to come back and be like, hey, I have more evidence, or I have more facts to present, or I have other people who are willing to corroborate this with me, or I actually have other people who experience this, and now we want to file a joint lawsuit together, they technically could come along and do something. So she doesn't have to completely drop this forever. And that's one of the things that I want people to be privy of. Because, like, I'm trying like, I understand people want to celebrate, but I'm trying really hard to make sure y'all understand what the facts are. So, yes, she filed a motion for non-suit without prejudice, meaning her current lawsuit has been dropped, but she can bring up this situation again, which probably won't happen unless she has more evidence or some other facts that she didn't bring up the first time. And in Dak's situation, there is a motion for dismissal, meaning more than likely that motion is going to be granted, and they are either settling out of court or otherwise handling this off the record, or it's otherwise being dropped. So there hasn't been any criminal proceedings. They haven't proven Dak Prescott to be guilty of anything. So in the spirit of innocent until proven guilty, Dak Prescott is innocent. Hey boss, how's it going? Good to see you. So that's where we are. That's why I said people who want to say Dak Prescott is innocent in a legal sense, y'all are 100% right. But as far as calling Victoria Shores a quote lioness female, as someone said in the chat, that is something that has not been proven or disproven. So the same way that Dak Prescott is not guilty of sexual assault because nothing was proven, she also isn't guilty of extortion because nothing was proven. Sugar Daddy points out ... or if she has a better attorney. That is also another situation in which she might bring it up again. And that could be something that happened. It could be that somebody else reached out to her and said, hey, I want to help you handle this, but we got to get rid of this lawsuit. We got to go about this a different way. And she might be like, okay, we're going to dismiss this. We'll come back to this at a later date with a different attorney and some more evidence and some different witnesses, and we'll try this again. Who knows? But as of right now, her case dropped, case closed. Dak Prescott, on his end, there's a motion for dismissal. Brian Bradford says, if. Yes, there's a lot of ifs, mainly because I want to make sure I tell y'all the truth and not half truths. Like I said, my main point in streaming this isn't to say, hey, Dak Prescott is innocent, he never did anything. It's to say, hey, there's no evidence that he ever did anything. These lawsuits have been dropped, and any responsible news outlet should be reporting that, because everybody was in such a rush to report that he had been accused, to report that he was being sued, to talk about the lawsuit that he was filing. And now that the case has been dropped, it's like people are quiet, and that's really weird to me. And JV said, boss, I told you she was on this from the start. Yes, this is my third episode on this topic. So thank you for letting people know about it, JV. In the first episode, I talked about what had been filed, and we kind of went over the details of it. In the second episode, I talked about the motion for dismissal for non-suit. And in this episode, I just wanted to let you guys know that a judge did grant that motion, so that lawsuit has been dropped. And the same way, I'm like, if she has a better attorney, she could bring it up again. At the same time, if she realizes she has no evidence and there's no grounds to get $100 million from Dak Prescott, she could just leave it alone and go on about her life. Boss Cowboy Sports says the media silence is very weird. I agree. Especially considering the things that they are reporting on. Like these weird ass rumors that the Cowboys might draft a quarterback in the second round that literally came from nowhere, have gotten more attention than, hey, that lawsuit that we talked about a whole bunch, it's actually been dropped and the case has been closed. So yeah, I do think the media silence is weird. There's probably a lot of reasons for it, none of which I support. I feel like if you're going to report on the story, report on the story. That means when there's updates on the story, you should be reporting on the story. So I'm glad y'all appreciate the content. Do y'all have any other questions about either lawsuit or where we are in any situation? Um, like I said before, if anything else does happen, so like if another lawsuit is brought up, or if somehow the motion to dismiss Dak's lawsuit is not granted, I will let y'all know. It's supposed to be officially dismissed as of May 14th. So that does give what, a little less than a month for something to happen. Um, but I just don't see that happening based on what we've seen. And once again, regarding 105.3 The Fan, that's what everybody wants to know about. Like, will there be consequences for what they did? I don't know. I think in terms of what we can control and consequences is just to be a little bit more careful about what we buy into, what we share, and who we give attention to. Because that's our responsibility as fans and consumers. Sugar Daddy said, I've been researching attorneys and everything. It's a strange case. Um, yeah, especially if you research the attorneys that are defending Victoria Shores. Um, that is one of the things that seemed weird to me, was that cases like this are not in their wheelhouse. They don't normally handle matters like this. So it really made me wonder how they met Victoria Shores and what made them interested in handling this case, considering that it's not something that they normally do. And especially on her end, you would think with something so serious, you would want somebody who specializes in this. On one of the episodes, or actually on two of the episodes, Flo Man came on, who graduated from Georgetown Law, and said their documents looked amateurish. I think a lot of that just had to do with their lack of experience in this situation and not really being well versed in what kind of evidence and what kind of statements that they should include in order to have a convincing argument here. And so just on her end, I would have wanted somebody with a little bit more experience. And I don't know if she just felt like she couldn't afford anyone, if these were the first people she found, if maybe she used this from somebody else. I don't know. Hey Elle, how's it going? Brother L says, the jazzy one. Thanks for continuing to cover this. Will there be an episode about how the commissioners slash NFL will assess this since the case is potentially dismissed, like what happened with Zeke? Well, the interesting thing about this is that we didn't really hear much from the NFL in terms of actions that they intended to take. When it came to Zeke, there was all sorts of speculation about him being suspended and other things that might happen as things were ongoing. Um, in this situation, we haven't heard a lot from the NFL. We've heard a few things from ESPN, and we've heard things from other media outlets that cover NFL related topics, but we didn't really hear anything from Roger Goodell about what would happen. Now, I think if this case were still going to trial, if either case were still going to trial, we might hear more about it. But that part was kind of weird to me, I'll be honest, because in other situations, as soon as a player is accused of something, once they are charged with a DUI, once they are accused of domestic violence, once they are charged with anything, we start to hear about potential consequences. The only thing that I can think of in this situation is that there were no criminal charges filed against Dak Prescott. And maybe because of that, the NFL was like, okay, we're going to stay out of it until these lawsuits are settled. And so maybe had the lawsuit gone forward, and he actually did end up settling with this woman on the record, then maybe we would have heard something, because that could have been seen as an admission in some sense. But in this case, there were no actual, like, contrary to reports, because I saw them too, where people were like, oh, she's filing criminal charges. There were no actual criminal charges filed. There were criminal reports filed, which is different than an actual charge. Supposedly, both Dak Prescott and Victoria Shores did file criminal reports against one another, which basically meant they went to some law enforcement officer or someone dealing with legal proceedings and said, hey, this person is committing a crime. But no charges were actually filed. There was a civil suit against Dak, and then there was his extortion lawsuit against Victoria Shores. And now to reiterate, her suit is officially dropped. This case is closed, and there's a motion to dismiss his. So for all the people in the last episode who were like, does this mean Dak won? I hope this is good news for you guys. And, if you're looking for these other media outlets to face consequences, I think the most you can do at this point is put pressure on them to say something if you care. Like I said, I have no intention to like go on Twitter and be like 105.3 The Fan, you just say something. I have better things to do with my time, honestly. They'll either say something or they won't, and I'll either continue to listen to their content or I won't. But outside of that, it's just like, y'all have the information, share it. Any other questions about either lawsuit, the status of either lawsuit, or any of the details that we didn't cover? Because I know that there were some details that we didn't cover that I think a lot of people were expecting to come out like once it went to trial. That's actually one of the reasons why I think there's a motion to dismiss. I don't think it means that he feels like she didn't do anything wrong. If you look at Dak Prescott's lawsuit, and I'll reiterate this, we talked about this last time, but in Dak Prescott's lawsuit, he mentions the Dallas Cowboys and his position as a quarterback a couple of times. To go into more detail about what that could potentially mean, it would mean that if this case were to go to trial, and Dak Prescott has said, hey, one of the reasons why I'm filing a lawsuit for extortion is because you bringing these charges against me has affected my position with the Dallas Cowboys. Any conversations that happen related to this, whether it's specifically this situation, or maybe somebody in the building having a general conversation with other players about sexual assault, or if despite what they've said in interviews, somehow this situation did actually impact the contract negotiations with Dak Prescott, all of that would be up for questioning if this were to go to trial. Between questioning and cross-examination, there's a lot of information that would have had to come out from various people in the building, more than likely, because of how he mentioned them in the lawsuit. So when I said, hey, not only does Dak Prescott not want this to go to trial, and Victoria Shores probably doesn't want this to go to trial, there's a lot of other people who are interested in keeping this out of courts and off of public record. That's what I mean. He named the Dallas Cowboys, and he mentioned his business as a quarterback specifically. And so there's some people who are like, I don't want to be questioned. I don't want to get on the witness stand. Please make this go away. And then on her end, there's also the fact that once we actually looked at her petition, the redacted sections in the demand letter, we learned were that they were going to a strip club together, right? It said that they met at her place of work and they started communicating via Snapchat, and they were going to a strip club together. Now, in my line of work, I run into all sorts of people. I'm a personal trainer. So I've met college athletes. I've met professional athletes. I've also done other types of work that have caused me to meet various people. And so to me, it was interesting in her petition that there was just like, we met at my place of work, talked on Snapchat, and went to a strip club together. I can't think of any situation where if I have a strictly professional relationship with the client that they would just hit me up and be like, hey, you want to go to the strip club with me? And I'll be like, sure. Like something would have to happen in the evolution of our relationship for me to go to, let me help you get in shape for your season, or let me help you get into athletic performance shape, to I'm going to go into this sexually charged atmosphere with you. Like that's not something that's going to happen like where we're just talking after a session and I'm like, yeah, let's do it, So I just have a feeling that there are a lot of details that a lot of people just didn't want to come out, and everybody got together and said, hey, if you drop your suit, I'll drop mine. We can figure the rest of this out of court, and nobody has to worry about being embarrassed or having our business put out on the streets. Stevie Mack said, Mike Florio, who used to practice law for 18 years, even said on The Fan when this all started that the case seemed bogus to him. A lot of legal professionals have said that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way those documents were written, which is, like I said, I feel like at minimum, if I were in Victoria Shore's position, I would have looked for more experienced attorneys in this type of case. Brother L said, only statement I heard was the obligatory, we the NFL are aware the situation will continue to monitor things as they play out. Yeah, I'm waiting for post 514. Conduct detrimental tends to be used. Yeah, that was that was the obligatory statement, which almost amounts to nothing. They say that for so many things. That statement gets issued so many times a year that half the time people don't even know it's been issued about something. And that's why I was like, they haven't really mentioned anything because they haven't mentioned anything specific. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. And they might also be waiting for post May 14th. And something might come up before then. So, in the case of her lawsuit, there was a motion for dismissal that was also supposed to happen on May 14th. And instead of waiting until May 14th, they ended up granting the non suit without prejudice. And so, as of April 12th, the case was closed. Same thing could happen here, where right now we're all waiting for May 14th. Something could happen between now and then to where it gets closed faster. In which case, I'll probably just go on Twitter and be like, hey guys, this happened. Unless there's some new information that comes out that compels me to go live like this again, which was supposed to be a 30-minute live, but here I am going on an hour because y'all are so much fun to talk to. And I mean that sincerely. JV says, wasn't she already in another relationship when she met with Dak on that night? That is a rumor. That is not mentioned in any official documents. Now, in the official documents, in her demand letter, for example, it does mention that this situation caused some problems between her and her fiance, but it doesn't mention when she became engaged or when that relationship started. Just as one of the damages that was mentioned that Dak Prescott owed her $100 million for, it was like, yeah, the relationship between her and her fiance has suffered. And I can look back at that just to be absolutely sure. Let me see. Short's petition. Let me see if I can control it from here. Fiance isn't in there. And relationship isn't in there. And then if we look up the demand letter, okay. It says Miss Shores has had to live with this pain and trauma for 7 years. It affected her relationship with her fiance and her everyday existence so much that she had to attend therapy and counseling and will require future therapy and counseling. So, yeah, said it affected her relationship with her fiance, but it does not mention when she became engaged or when that relationship started. All right. Well, I do appreciate y'all coming in here, chatting with me. And I love the fact that y'all appreciate this content. I like looking into stuff like this. And if nobody else supports the fact, I will, or facts, plural. If nobody else supports the facts, I will. Unity says research skills on points with the control app. Yes, that is research 101. Like you have to have that skill prepared. Clement says, I trust people who practice law that this case has a lot of holes in it and that this is a he said, she said. I believe that the case was dismissed due to lack of actual facts on her side of the case. I believe the same. I try not to get too deep into this is what I think and this is how I feel. But real quick, because I haven't given y'all a lot of that before I close out, I will, and as a reward for showing up, I will tell y'all what I think and how I feel. I just want y'all to keep in mind that this is not facts. This is what I think and how I feel. I think, and I say this based on the fact that I don't see any other cases where sexual assault victims are awarded $100 million in damages. I think this person saw the potential for a come up, and Dak Prescott did admit that something consensual happened between them. But in a situation where nobody was there to see what happened, there's always room to say, hey, this is what happened, and basically take a chance at getting awarded damages, right? Somebody brought up the Deshaun Watson effect. And maybe I'll do this with you guys one day, even though it's an old case. One of the lawsuits, because although we talk about 22 accusers, there were actually multiple lawsuits brought up against Deshaun Watson. One of those lawsuits was brought up by 8 of the accusers together. And in the fact finding on that case, it turned out that a lot of those women were being dishonest, and that was never brought to light, right? So this is not the first time that we may have heard of anybody like kind of using their relationship to a high profile person to kind of present their version of a story in order to be rewarded damages or otherwise sue for money. I think that her attorneys were in over their heads. I think they believed that he would be so caught up in contract negotiations and other things regarding his career and his life that maybe he just might pay her or try to settle out of court to make it go away. And what actually happened is that he got one of the best attorneys at handling this type of situation to actually countersue. And I think they didn't see that coming. And her attorneys were just not prepared to deal with Levi McCatherine. Very few attorneys are, as we've seen in the past, right? So I do think that this was a situation where she went into it knowing, regardless of what actually happened, I think she knew that she did not have enough evidence and enough facts to actually win this in a court of law. And that's why there was a demand letter issued in the first place. And then once the legal proceedings started happening, I think she saw that, this wasn't going to go how she thought it was going to go, and decided to drop her case. Dak Prescott, being the private person that he is, wanted it to go away, filed a motion for dismissal, and anything else that's going to happen is happening out of court. It'll be settled there. Clement says, I do sympathize with her that she had to go to therapy for 7 years and that it has an effect on her relationship. The question is, why did you wait 7 years? That's something that a lot of people bring up. And when her attorneys were asked, the only thing that they mentioned was the fact that a lot of survivors do take a long time to report. And this is true. While it is true, it doesn't really tell us why in her case. So I don't know. Unlike most people, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to ask that question, but I don't have an answer, and one was never presented. Brother L says, any teasers for the next show? A few. We're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up with the WNBA. There are a few things that have come down the pipeline from NFL communications. Let me pull that up real quick, and I'll tell y'all kind of what some of those are. So there's a little bit of information about some other events that are going to happen alongside the draft. A few dates have been announced in terms of some of the things surrounding the regular season, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about who reported for the 30 visits and who didn't, and if that has any bearing on how the Cowboys might pick. I'm gonna be honest, with the number 24 pick, there's so much that could happen before that point in the draft. It's really hard to predict, but we'll talk about it a little bit. And whatever happens with the NBA playoffs by then, we'll talk about that as well. So that's all I got in terms of teasers. Oh, also, pretty soon, I'm going to be debuting something called Monet Talks. I have a guest who's going to come on and talk with me about this whole Drake, Kendrick, Lamar, Rick Ross situation. He does a lot of studying in the world of hip hop. So that should be a really good conversation in terms of what's going on with that 3 or multiple way beef, and what that means for like hip hop culture, hip hop fans, and what it says about these particular artists. So that should be fun. It'll be a fun bonus episode, but that's it. Anyway, I need to eat, you guys. I need to eat, watch these play-in games, and get some more work done. So thanks for tuning in to this impromptu show. I appreciate all the love, and hopefully I'll see y'all next time. This has been another bonus episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and I'm out.